Hello and welcome to this very special edition of Conversations with Andre Whitehead, our television broadcast. We thank you so much for tuning in today as we highlight the Patrick Henry Family Services GALA for 2018. Stay tuned as you learn all about this incredible agency and you'll hear firsthand stories of individuals that they have helped. Stay tuned. This is Conversations.
It's my pleasure now to introduce Robert Day, a dear friend, and we appreciate him so much. Many of you are familiar with Robert as the CEO of our organization. You may have heard of him on the radio, and maybe you've read some of his books. His books explain how he grew up in poverty and in a less ideal family situation. We're also grateful that God has led him to Patrick Henry Family Services now for nearly 8 years. His God-sized vision inspires our staff on a daily basis and has propelled us all forward. As we increase our services to reach more and more families and children, he's here tonight to give us a glimpse of looking into the future. Following his presentation, you will also hear personal stories in person and some videos of families that have actually been touched by this ministry and by the God that we serve. They will introduce themselves, and during the program, feel free to move your chairs if you need to so that you can see the screens. Every day, though, I got to jump off the script here for just a second because every day I'm inspired by this man, knowing what he's gone through and how he's turned his life around. Every day, this organization lives to help people change their lives for the better. And every day, when I run into families and children and single moms that are struggling and they don't really see their future, I'm always reminded of how God has turned his life around and what a blessing he is to this organization in helping us move forward and change people's lives. Robert, let's give a warm welcome.
Good evening. But welcome everybody. We are so excited about our first gala and really excited about the turnout. Appreciate so much you being here. And in appreciation for your travel and for your time, the little booklet, the Straight Talk devotional guide that's on the table is my gift to you for coming. So thank you very much. If you don't like it, give it to somebody else who might, okay? You know, I cannot remember a time in my nearly 8 years as the CEO of Patrick Henry Family Services where I have been more excited about the future and more inspired by our past than I am tonight. I have a new hobby. Actually, it's my only hobby. I just discovered it. And most of you are going to think it sounds a bit odd. It is odd. I collect orphanages. Told you it would be odd. In attempting to understand where we came from as an institution and trying to see a sustainable, bright future and a path to that future, I began to study the history of orphanages and of orphans, particularly here in the state of Virginia. And I have found 105 institutions that were opened in Virginia between 1786 and 1993. 105. Now, only 11 of those 105 still operate in their original capacity, and Patrick Henry Boys and Girls Homes is one of those 11. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to go into any detail about all the things, really cool stuff that I learned about orphanages. My poor staff have already had to endure many exuberant conversations about orphanages, but I won't put you through that tonight. But I'm going to share with you a couple of things, of insights that I've gained in what I think has just been a remarkable study of history. You know, the orphanage movement began as the church's way to care for orphans and dependent children. And by dependent children, I mean those children whose parents could not provide the basic necessities of care. Now remember, this was in the days before public welfare. It was in the days before foster care. And the orphanage was how the church and certain civic organizations responded to the great need of their day. Now, budgets were usually small, partly because staff was relatively few. What amazed me is that churches often worked together across denominational lines to enlist volunteers who took care of these children 24/7. Now, it appears that the church back in the 1800s and the early part of the 1900s understood the multiple mandates of Scripture to take care of the fatherless, the poor, and the helpless. Now, on your screen is a picture of one of those 105 orphanages. Can anybody guess which one that is? It is a photo of the Oddfellows Orphan Asylum, one of those 105 that once operated in Virginia, and one of 7 orphanages that serve children right here in Lynchburg. In fact, we're meeting tonight very close to where that took place, just right on the other side of Murray Lane there. Now, what's really fascinating is that before the Oddfellows purchased the land and purchased this building, they purchased it from an orphanage that had built this and had operated it successfully for over 9 years. It was the Southern Negro Orphan Society. And at one time, they cared for as many as 250 children at one time, until it closed in 1899. So fascinating history just around us that we have forgotten about in our own communities. So as you may know, in 1961, the vision for Patrick Henry Boyd's plantation, as it was called then, became a reality. And some of you in this room might even remember that day. And I know several of you in this room have been part of the rich history as we've attempted to take care of vulnerable children for the last 5 decades. You who've been our donors, our volunteers, you have been the heroes for the last 5 decades, because you have allowed us, you've helped us, you have really been part of us as we have served these children so well in 57 years. But as time progressed, we all know that orphanages and even children's homes began to close as the state and the federal government created the welfare system that allowed families to care for their children in their own homes, and the foster care system that came later to care for abused and neglected children who shouldn't be cared for by the families in their own homes. Now, while there's still a small number of children who still need a group home setting, the majority of vulnerable children in our society today are now cared for in a family setting. It's either in their own or in a substitute family, and quite frankly, that's how it ought to be. It is biblical, and it is the best. As time progressed, however, and here's the kicker. As time has progressed, the child welfare system has faced its own challenges. Because of the flaws that often occur in impersonal, bureaucratic government systems, fewer Christians have been willing to step forward to serve as foster parents. And because there is nowhere in Scripture that I have been able to find that asks the government to care for fatherless children, we believe at Patrick Henry Family Services that it remains the primary responsibility of God's church to work in cooperation with the government and other private agencies to provide that care, and now listen, to even fund that care. Because if we're working for the government to do it and they're paying us to do it, it is not our ministry. Recently, my staff and I have been given an enormous vision. And tonight, I am going to share that for the first time in a public forum like this. We believe that we've come up with a third way, a uniquely better way to care for at-risk children. Our plan is an initiative that will pull government, churches, and private agencies together to ensure that children remain within the care of a healthy family, their own healthy family, or supported by perhaps a substitute healthy family that are supported by, get this, a local congregation. In the rare occasions that a child cannot safely live in a family setting, a group home setting with Christian caregivers, but also supported by a local congregation, will also be an option. You see on the screen a graphic of what we are calling Zero Queued. It is our vision that by the year 2030, right here in our region, there will be no child outside of one of these three circles. None. Every child in a healthy family, if that's not possible, in a healthy substitute family, and if that's not possible, in institutional care by Christian caregivers, and all three circles supported by local congregations that are making sure this happens the way it ought to happen. Now, keeping children from entering the foster care system through our Hope for Tomorrow counseling services, our Safe Families for Children, and our Homes of Hope ministry is where we begin. Expanded Families, which is our own private alternative to the state foster care system, is just in the beginning stages of what we believe will be a church-driven foster care system. And of course, we will continue to provide excellent care for children who need greater supervision in our cottages, just as we have done for 57 years. Now, there's not enough time for me tonight to explain to you all the wonderful aspects of each one of these ministries and how they're going to work together, or how we're going to pull this vision off. But I've got several staff here who would just love to sit down and talk to you about any one of these ministries that you're going to hear about tonight, or about how we just are going to pull this thing off. And if we can't talk to you today, make sure that you invite us and we'll come to your home, to your church, to your business, to your civic group, and explain to you just how we think we can pull this off by the year 2030. Now tonight, I'm inviting you to step into this God-sized vision with us. Over the next 2 years, we're going to be further developing this plan, which I believe could have a major impact on our local community. We plan to launch it officially on June 1st, 2020. And my invitation to you tonight is, quite frankly, I think an exciting one. We're inviting you to be part of the future. Just as the folks did back in 1961 who chose to create a children's home that was based on the latest version of the orphanage of that day, we invite you to be the heroes of this new vision. We invite you to embark on something that was not even imagined in 1961. Now tonight as you came in, you passed a Model A car out there. Now it was the second huge success for the Ford Motor Company. And if you recall, it replaced the revolutionary Model T that really just changed the world. Well, the children's home that we opened in 1961 was like that Model A. It was a second and better version of what had come before. Nevertheless, it's a model that has now, what? Outlived its usefulness. Now, we have a car in space. You've seen this picture? We have a car in space, and it's on its way to Mars, no less. It was launched with every bit of innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurial spirit as the Model T and the Model A was a century ago. And I am convinced, if private industry can do this, if they can launch a car into space and send it to Mars as a test to see how they can send human beings to Mars, I am convinced that us in the private child welfare sector and us in the church can find a way, with God's divine help, to build a better system of care for the most vulnerable and needy children in our community. The only thing that's standing in our way is our will. We have more congregations in the state of Virginia than we have children in the foster care system. We have more resources in our churches if we combined it together than the state does and what they're putting towards families. We just have to decide we're going to do it. Now tonight you're going to hear about just some of the ways that children and families are currently being impacted by these unique programs. And as you listen to these stories, I invite you to imagine with me. Imagine what it would mean if they were multiplied again and again and again over the next decades. It's my prayer that we're going to look back at tonight as a night that changed the history and the personal stories of countless numbers of children living in our communities. Children who are alive now and children yet to be conceived. And that they will have been helped because of what we decide here tonight. And so I want to thank you. I want to thank you for coming. I want to thank you for caring. And I want to thank you for what you are going to do, what we are going to do together to change the history of the child welfare system and change the personal stories of thousands of children. God bless.
Good evening. My name is Beth Briggs, and my husband Michael and I made a choice a few years ago to become foster parents. Parenting a child from hard places is, well, hard. We have been raising our 4 biological children for a while now, and we felt like grizzled veterans. Having experienced a lot, we thought we were on top of the game. In reality, we didn't know much. We didn't know much at all. Our first foster care placement was a teenage girl who, after years of devastating neglect, had lost both parents to drug-related deaths. Her persistent history of trauma was so damaging to her development, both physically and emotionally. She introduced us to some, shall I say, new ways of experiencing, processing, and interacting with the world. It didn't take long for us to appreciate the value and need for counseling, both for our daughter and for us. Our most recent addition to our family, a cute 6-year-old boy, has reinforced how much we still do not know. The challenges associated with helping our little guy to thrive are substantial. We knew from day one that professional help was needed, so we turned to Hope for Tomorrow, counseling. One of the first things you would immediately notice about our little guy is his overwhelming need to control. Janice, our therapist at Hope for Tomorrow, is helping all of us, our entire family, understand that control is just a part of his survival strategy, trying to ensure that he is not alone. Janice taught us a simple but powerful gesture with 2 fingers raised. We say, "Let's stick together." I have used it to remind our little guy to stick together with me in the parking lot, to stick together in the store, to stick with me on the sidewalk. It's a wonderful reminder to him that he is not alone. This gesture became even more meaningful to me recently. Our little guy and I were in the middle of a very big meltdown, a meltdown in a public place. You know, the kind of meltdown that can make you dream of digging a hole right where you stand? This one was much bigger than I was used to with 4 kids. As I looked at my little boy, I could see the terror in his eyes. He was not only angry, but he was letting me know he would fight to remain in control. So I resorted to what Janice had been teaching me, to physically get down at his level, use soft eyes, and I asked him to walk back to me from where he was so that we could stick together. I'd like to say that it ended quickly right there. Of course, he refused over and over and over again, and only got louder and louder. But then I asked him if he would meet me halfway. Though there was still some hesitation, this little guy eventually came around and met me halfway. We walked out together. He didn't run. We had a moment where we stuck together, a very small but potentially life-changing moment. And looking back at that moment, there was so much happening during that meltdown. It was about a frightened little guy wanting his way, thinking that was the only way to be safe and to be in control. It was about me, the adult, needing to feel like I knew how to lead us out of this crazy situation. It was about this simple gesture that we were taught in our counseling session, to stick together. It was about him and I meeting each other halfway. The counseling that we have received at Hope for Tomorrow has helped us to look beyond behavior that would otherwise be so painfully troubling. Our boy is learning to recognize his emotions, and Janice is helping to create practical, useful tools to help him regulate his feelings. She is helping to create an environment in which he has tools to navigate life in a healthy manner and thrive. Her support has helped us understand that there is a need behind his actions, a need that wasn't met when he was young, a need that we can help now. The support he is receiving and the support we are receiving gives our precious little guy a chance at life where he can thrive. He does have hope for tomorrow.
My name is Zach, and my wife Missy and I have 3 children. Aiden, who's 14, Cole, who's 10, and Kinley, who's 6. In May of 2017, we welcomed our first hosting, Isaiah, through Safe Families for Children. We were blessed to have Isaiah in our home for more than 47 days.
My name is Ashley. I have been in and out of prison since I was 18. When I finally got out, I got pregnant. I was in a program in Roanoke and I got kicked out because I accidentally dropped my baby. Not being in the program was a probation violation, so I knew I was headed back to jail and was going to lose my son. A CPS worker told me that Safe Families for Children. When I met with Cherie and she told me she was going to find someone to take care of my baby, I knew everything would be okay.
On Tuesday evening, we got a call from Safe Families for Children inviting us to our first hosting. We were going to be hosting a mom, child for a mom who might be potentially going back to jail, and they needed someone to take care of him. He was 2 months old. We had told the Safe Families initially that we only wanted to host children around our children's ages. We never are planned to take in any infants. But God laid it on our hearts that day during that phone call and told us that this is just what we were supposed to do. So about a week later, we got that call, and the mom was going back to jail, and they were going to bring Isaiah over to us.
One of the coolest things for us was seeing how our children responded and loved a baby that was not born into our own family. We were blessed having Isaiah with us and witnessed the changes within our own family and our community of friends. While outsiders were confused and asked a lot of questions, we just said, this is Isaiah and he's part of our family. Personally, I'm passionate about fatherhood and the importance of positive male role models in a child's life. Safe families for children, and God provided me with the opportunity to fulfill that significant purpose.
After I was in jail, I wasn't sure what would happen. I've been told that safe family host parents might come to visit me, but I wasn't sure if they would. But Melissa did. She came to see me in jail, and I could tell that she was a good person. I was so glad that my baby was being taken care of by such good people. The next time she came, she brought Isaiah to see me. He had grown a lot in a short time, and I could see that he was happy and she loved him. I know that if I had not been able to be sure he was taken care of, I would have lost it.
It was about 2 or 3 weeks later that I went to go visit Ashley in jail. Isaiah went back to live with her after that time. It was really awkward when we first met her. We didn't know her, she didn't know us. We'd loved her baby like he was our own. But we weren't ready for it to be over. We asked Ashley if she'd be willing to let us continue a journey and a relationship with she and Isaiah, because we just didn't want it to be over. And most of the time during foster care, once the child's returned home, that relationship does tend to cease between the placing family and the family who's fostered him. But we didn't want our story to end that way. So we're very thankful that with Safe Families, we have continued the beautiful relationship since Ashley got out last July. It's March, and we've had a great relationship with she and Isaiah since then.
Ever since Isaiah came to me and the Tucks have been family. A lot of things have happened to me, but they have been with me every step of the way. Honestly, I tried to push them away a little bit because I didn't really believe that they would stick with me. But they always have been there. I couldn't imagine a better family even though we were not related by blood. I know that they love me and Isaiah and they want to help us.
So it's almost been a year since Isaiah came to live with us, and he's the little guy down here making all the noise. He lived with us for about 47 days, but we're still very involved in his life. We celebrated his first birthday in March as a family. His dad, Aaron, has now joined our little multi-family unit we have going on. But for us personally, I was talking to Zach, and this experience for us has changed who we are. You can look back and you might put people in a box and see them like she was in jail, or they had a drug problem or whatever it might be. But this has removed the box, which allowed us to see them, see Ashley and other children that we've been able to host. We've been able to see their families in their brokenness, and no matter what their past or their circumstances, we know we can love them. God equipped us all to love, and so it's just embracing that aspect of being able to love people. It's very beautiful the way God changed us in a way that we never expected to see.
I don't know what's going to happen to me in the future, but I know because of the relationship I have with Missy and Zach through Safe Families, I'm not going to have to go through it alone. I look back to a year ago, and I'm not really sure what would have happened to me if I'd been separated from my son. I'm so glad that I have to never know. And Safe Families has also came around me with a lot of other people also. And I seriously look back sometimes and just seriously think about everything. And if it wasn't for them, my life would be totally different. And I'm just so glad that I have them.
Stay here for just a second.
This has to be what God meant when he said, when you've done it to the least of these, you've done it unto me. Getting involved in changing people's lives. And I remember the first time that we met, we had gotten a call and that you were going to be arrested. And matter of fact, they were on their way to come and get you. And so I don't normally get involved a lot of times with the day-to-day stuff as the director, but everyone was out of the office, and so I was the only one with the car, and so I headed out with another employee. The first time I met Ashley, she came out, we pulled up in the driveway, and she came out, and it was a tough moment. And you can imagine, here's a mom knowing that she's getting ready to go to jail, and she's having to place her baby into my arms and trust that she's going to be taken care of. It was probably the most moving moment. You talk about responsibility. But we never lost hope of knowing that God has a plan and a purpose and a future for your life. And look what God has done and will continue to do through that. And so you're our hero. We appreciate you so much in allowing God to continue to work in your life. And I just believe that God has a great future and a hope for Isaiah as well. Actually got to testify at the Capitol not long ago, and some of the legislators applauded her for her courage to continue to do what she's done. Oh, you think that's funny, huh?
My personal story involves my husband and I adopting 12 children from hard places. They're now all adults, and we consider ourselves successful because they're still alive, and so are we. We had a lot of different definition of success 20 years ago when we started this journey. But through them and knowing them, and through knowing their parents, their birth parents, we have a similar response to what Missy and Zach were talking about tonight. A love that erases all the lines and sees the truth. I heard that song for the first time back in February after sharing the story I'm going to share with you now with our staff. I want to share it with you tonight because it shows clearly that just this event, this first Patrick Henry Family Services Gala, has already changed one life. So in February, we had a dessert gathering to teach the table captains how to prepare for tonight. Now, as you can see, we had an event to tell them like 1 or 2 minutes of instructions, but we had a night and it was really cool. We were at the Neighbor's Place, a restaurant that's near our office in Lynchburg, and we were in a side room that was just packed with people. I had the job of describing to them what they could expect when they came tonight, what their responsibilities were as table captains. My audience was a group of middle and upper middle class, educated, intelligent, church-going people, or so I thought. I mean, okay, now you have to listen to the rest of the story because that is not what I just meant. That was the script. That's the sad part. Nobody caught it. That's not what I meant. They were educated and intelligent people. Okay, we are so off track. While I was giving them a taste of the stories that they were here tonight, I told them about Ashley and the Tucks, the story that you just heard. And I concluded my presentation with this. One of our goals at Patrick Henry Family Services is to connect the church with people who are marginalized. This not only impacts the families we serve, but it allows church folks to rid themselves of generalizations. If you develop a meaningful relationship with a recovering addict, for example, you can no longer say all addicts are bad people, because you met one that isn't. Or maybe if a felon becomes your friend, you can't fear all felons because now you know one who isn't frightening at all. And somehow, those people, who sometimes we as a church seek to avoid, the people that Jesus actually hung out with when he was here on earth, they become part of our lives and everything changes. I continued on with my speech, and if you know me, as usual, got a few laughs, saw a lot of enthusiasm, was having a great night. Mr. Day came up, he closed the night in prayer, and I spoke to a few people and was heading out to my car to drive home. And this is the part where "or so I thought" comes in. As I was leaving, a young woman in all black approached me, and I realized that she was one of the 2 servers that had been assigned into our room. She had heard everything I said. I was a little nervous to find out what she was going to say to me, and she didn't say much, just a couple sentences. She said, "I just wanted to thank you for all that you guys are doing. I worked 3 jobs and I didn't want to come in tonight, but you see, I'm a recovering addict. I am a felon. So now I know why God wanted me here tonight." She reached up and gave me a big hug. I hugged her and thanked her for sharing that with me. I walked away from that experience in tears because I was so grateful that God uses us, used me even, in the most unlikely of situations. I had no idea that this girl was still in the room when I was speaking, and I obviously knew nothing of her history. But God used a GALA table captain instruction speech, of all things, to remind a young, tired, struggling server that he loves her. He used this event, you as our guests, 2 months ago, before most of you agreed to come, long before this event even occurred, to impact the life of one person and to remind all of us of something one of our longtime staff members reminded me. It's not how much we do, but how small we can do to touch a life and make a difference. I want to thank everybody who is here tonight. I want to thank everybody who made this possible. I would not even think about trying to name everyone. A lot of people were involved in making it happen. Thank you for being here to listen to our passion. A couple of things on your way out. You're going to receive a pin from some of our Boys and Girls Home residents as a token of our appreciation for being here tonight. And if you missed out on an opportunity to have your pictures taken, you can still do that on your way out, and we'll actually send you a free digital copy of that picture. So if you're one of those people whose husband hasn't worn a tie for like 6 years and you want a picture of him to prove that he was, this is what you can do. We'll send that to you by email later. So now, to conclude our evening, I want to invite David Marshall to offer our benediction. David's a former president of our Board of Trustees and is currently the treasurer. He has a new role as he and his wife Susan are now family friends in our Safe Families for Children's program. Most recently, they're doing some respite care for a safe family from their church who is hosting a 2-month-old baby boy. David wanted me to make sure and tell you that even though he's proud of the title, family friend, it's Susan who's doing most of the work. David, come bless our evening.
Those of you who know Susan know why I had to ask for that. Let's pray. God, thank you for tonight. Thank you for this organization. Thank you for the many people who have committed their lives to being a part of what you're doing through Patrick Henry Family Services. Thank you for helping to put together tonight, for all the people that came out to put things together so that we could have this. We gave you tonight. This is your ministry. Now it's in your hands. Please prompt us as you would have us to know from you, directly from you into our hearts, how you want us to respond. Maybe it's just to tell several people, tell a friend what you heard, what you learned. Maybe it's to step up, take a bigger role. God, we call on you to speak into our hearts individually, as you love to do, to show us our next step. God, thank you for every person who's given up their evening to be here. And I pray that you'll make our hearts attentive to what you would have for us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Well, that's the broadcast for today, and I hope that you've enjoyed it and found it informative. And we want to thank our friends at Patrick Henry Family Services for their partnership and for all they do for the community. Have a good day.